The Gospel of Mark, we meet two desperate people seeking healing. First, we encounter a man named Jairus, who is a leader of a synagogue, who comes to Jesus pleading with him to go and heal his daughter who is close to death. While on his way with Jairus, a woman who has suffered with bleeding for 12 years wishes to touch Jesus to receive healing. The woman had spent many years and all of her money seeking healing from one doctor and then another. But her efforts were futile, and she continued to get worse. Then she heard about Jesus healing many people, and she became determined to touch just the hem of his cloak, hoping that this would bring her back to health. Both Jairus and the woman were seeking a healing and a restoration. Jairus wanted his daughter restored to her former good health, and the woman also wanted to be restored to her former health. They both believed that Jesus had the power to restore, and they sought him out. Now, when we hear about restoration, we often think about buildings, or great works of art. Great works of art like the frescoes Antonio Palomino painted in the 17th century in the Santos Juanes church in Valencia, Spain. Palomino painted such subjects as the Virgin Mary, John the Baptist, the patriarchs, the saints of the apocalypse, and many other frescoes. But time and fire damage had deteriorated those frescoes. The fire in 1936 had crystallized salts on the work, and then these white incrustations started forming and continued to grow on them. There was a restoration attempt in the 1960s, which actually made things worse by leaving animal glue in an insoluble layer of gunk. Standard practices of using chemicals to restore the salts, or to remove the salts and the gunk, were concluded to destroy the paint, and therefore the frescoes they couldn't do it anymore for them. Couldn't save them. Well, people at the University of Valencia came up with another way to save and restore the works of art: bacteria. Certain bacteria was trained to eat the salts and the old glue and nothing else. So the bacteria was embedded in a gel and brushed onto the paintings. After 90 minutes, the gel was gently washed off and the paintings were left to dry. This killed the bacteria, but left the frescoes with a new luster. Not as if they had been freshly painted, but with clean paint. The restorers at Santos Juanes in Valencia, Spain, used an agent of restoration which died to make others clean and whole. Now, does that remind you of anyone else? Jesus is a restoring agent of God who dies to make others clean and whole. Now, Jesus is not restoring paintings or old buildings, but people. Jesus restores damaged people. The need for restoration is not something exclusive to the New Testament or our modern day. In our Old Testament reading for today from Psalm 130, we hear the yearnings of the psalmist for healing and restoration. He opens the psalm with, "Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice." The psalmist is desperate for God to hear his confession and plea for help. The psalmist in verses 1 through 6 is seeking his individual redemption or healing or restoration. The psalmist proclaims that if God were to count every sin we commit, well then no one would be righteous. No one could stand before the Lord. It is only through the work of God that can anyone be restored to a right relationship with God. It is only through God's forgiveness that anyone may come before God. So the psalmist waits and hopes for the Lord's forgiveness. Then in verses 7 and 8, the psalmist writes about a communal restoration. He writes, "O Israel, hope in the Lord. For with the Lord there is steadfast love, and with him is great power to redeem. It is God who will redeem Israel from its iniquities." To redeem something or someone is to restore that thing to its rightful place or condition. It is to restore that person to his rightful or his or her rightful place and relationship. By redeeming Israel, God is restoring Israel to its proper place in relationship with God. By forgiving the psalmist, God is restoring him to his proper place in relationship with God. Now, we all have a need for restoration. We all have a need to have our damages and our deterioration restored to a prior condition. We all have something which has deteriorated in our lives. For many of us, our health and abilities have deteriorated, and we would want our well-being restored to a previous state. Maybe your hopes and dreams are damaged and have deteriorated. Maybe you have lost your sense of peace and confidence. Maybe you have lost much of your faith or your determination to live a holy life. Maybe your friendships or your marriage has failed. Or there are many ways we might seek healing so we could be restored to a previous state or condition. We often pray about these different deteriorated parts of our lives, asking for God's help to redeem us and restore us. We pray to be healed of a sickness or injury. We pray to be reconciled with a friend. We pray to find some inner peace or some vital energy. The woman who suffered from bleeding for 12 years had certainly prayed for healing and restoration of health. And when she touched the hem of Jesus' robe, she was healed. Her health was restored, at least in the one area that she most desired. And the Scriptures record numerous stories of people being restored in one area of their life. There was the man in the synagogue with a withered hand whom Jesus healed. There were people whose eyesight that Jesus restored. For many of those, or many of these incidences, the Scriptures only report that one aspect of their lives was made whole. Now, there are instances in the Bible which tell us that we must do some work in our restoration as well. Take, for example, the story of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is a tax collector who finds himself the host of Jesus in his own house. And little Zacchaeus is so impressed with the Lord's attention that he has a change of heart about his work and the people around him. Zacchaeus promises to Jesus to give away half his money to the poor and to repay anyone he has swindled 4 times over what he took from them. Zacchaeus understood that his restoration was more than just what Jesus gave him, but was something that he had to do also on his own. Now then, there are restorations which are more than just one aspect of a person's life. For example, there was the paralyzed man who was lowered down through the roof while Jesus was teaching in the house. The man wanted to use his legs again. He wanted to be able to move about. But Jesus forgave his sins and not only healed his relationship with God, but also his paralyzed limbs. It became a wholeness of restoration for him. Commenting on the healings of the New Testament, Edwin Hugh, a professor of bioethics and Christianity at Regent College, notes, especially in the New Testament, physical healing is not considered to be a complete restoration of human being, of well-being. Complete healing must take place on the basis of redemption, which brings forgiveness of sins, reconciliation with God, and renewal of relationships with others. Think again about the 10 lepers and how Jesus healed them. They could return once again to a social life. They could get a job. They could go back to their families. It was not just a healing of a disease. It was a healing of wholeness for them. This gives us another way to think about what is worn down in our lives. Is it a single aspect about which we need to pray? Or is what concerns us most to be nothing more than a symptom of a larger wear and tear affecting who we are on a much deeper level? If it's the latter, if it is a deeper level, then we need to ask God to redeem us afresh, to restore us on a deeper level. What does it mean to be restored? We often imagine restoration to mean that something is returned to its original state. To restore is to put something back to the way it was. That may work if we're talking about a car or a sofa. But then when we think about restoration in our own lives, it is important to see that the Bible is not talking about putting something back in its exact original condition. If we are anxious and unsettled, we might wish that the sense of peace that we had as children could be restored. But the peace then may have been because our childish outlook was mostly uninformed about the world. Do we now really want to return to a childish state? I don't think so. Likewise, if it is our faith that we would like to have made whole, we surely do not want to return to a blind certainty we may have once had that made us suspicious or intolerant of people who did not understand the Bible exactly as we do or did. Fortunately, that kind of restoration is not what the Bible is talking about. The work on the frescoes of Sant Juanes Church in Valencia, Spain, was not to make the paintings look like they did the day the artist Palomino finished them. The restoration was to remove the grime, repair the damage, and stabilize them so that their inherent beauty, their message, and even their age can be seen and speak to today's viewers. God's promise of restoration is not to return us to a state of naivete or unthinking discipleship or simple and ultimately inadequate solutions. Neither is God's restoration a spiritual tummy tuck to make us a facsimile of what we used to be. Instead, when we seek healing and restoration from God, God grants us wholeness. It is a wholeness where the beauty of our scars, the lines of our maturity, the wisdom from struggles, and the empathy from the dark valleys that we have walked in enable us to live in a deeper peace and gratitude. And we confront life as it is with hope. When Jairus' daughter was raised from the dead by Jesus, there was a restoration, but not a return to the innocence from before her passing. Jesus did not rewind the clock and take away the harsh reality of the little girl's death. He restored her life, and wiser, more mature parents received their daughter once again. And we can imagine that the little girl was not the same as before either. Having experienced death, she went on in her life with a different perspective than most people. The woman who bled for so many years had her life restored as well, but she was not the same as before either. We can only imagine what those years of frustration in finding a cure taught her about life. Perhaps after Jesus healed her, the woman had a lot more patience with other people's problems and hardships. Perhaps every day she woke up grateful not to have pain or bleeding. Maybe she looked at things as better and brighter than she had before. They were restored, these two, but they were not the same as they were before. Many people think that our ultimate goal is to return to the innocence of a child. They believe that we lost our innocence in the Garden of Eden and have been on a journey to return there ever since. But perhaps we are to be restored to a right relationship with God by being wiser and more knowledgeable than we were before. We are to be, in Jesus' words, as innocent as doves, but as wise as serpents. Maybe being restored does not mean we lose our crow's feet, but rather we have a greater appreciation and acceptance of our fine wrinkles and our lines of age. When restoring us, God does not eliminate the sheen of age or use. Maybe when we are restored, we do not even receive healing of our sickness or injury, just as the Apostle Paul continued on in his life after he was not healed of what he called a thorn in the flesh for him. Paul was restored to a right relationship with God, but his physical ailment continued. God telling him, my strength is shown in your weakness. Wholeness is defined as being right with God, not as having all of our parts functioning correctly and perfectly, even though, boy, we'd certainly like to have that happen. It's not having our circumstances in life all to our liking, and boy, we'd like to have that too. Wholeness is being with God. And I pray that each of you, and our church seeks healing with God and is restored to wholeness by being right with God. Amen.